longtime NBA writer from the Sporting News, Sean Deveney. He joins me now on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Sean, welcome back, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you?
Oh, everything's good. There's so many basketball things going on. We got the playoffs, which have kind of been anticlimactic, right? We all thought it was going to be two teams, and I don't think we've seen anything to pull us off that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think the only surprise has been how easy it's been for both of those teams that they've gotten to this point, and both teams are 18-0 at this point.
Yeah, you got the Spurs who lose, obviously, Kawhi the other night. Is that done? I mean, they got a shot in this thing anymore, or no Kawhi, or even with Kawhi? Do you see an easy series there for the Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they get Kawhi back, they get 2 games back in San Antonio. They can get back into it and make it a series. But I don't think anybody's under the delusion that the Spurs have a legitimate chance at winning this thing. I think they caught the Warriors off guard in Game 1. You had the Leonard injury, and of course, then the Warriors were able to come back. And I don't think they'll catch the Warriors off guard again. Like I said, you get Kawhi back, maybe you get one of those games in San Antonio, but it's hard to see this thing going much past 5 games.
Yeah, and obviously on the other side tonight, Game 1. I mean, I kind of envision this series of maybe being like Sixers-Lakers in the finals when Iverson was able to steal Game 1, and then the Lakers just basically beat them up the last 4 games. That's the only way I see the Celtics kind of winning one.
Yeah, exactly. You come in and you come off of a tough series, as I recall. The Sixers had a rough series leading into that one, and they're able to take a team that's sort of sitting back. Like I said, that's pretty much what happened to Golden State, I think, in Game 1, and I think that's the Celtics' best chance, especially since they're playing here in Boston in that game. So you'd have to give the Celtics at least a chance to get this one, but beyond that, it's really hard to see them winning much more than one game here.
Sean Deveney, NBA writer from the Sporting News. What's the mood in Boston? Are they more excited about the number 1 pick, or are they more excited about tonight's game?
Well, I think that there is look, anytime you have LeBron playing in Boston, everybody's going to be a little amped up for it. So I think there's certainly an element of that. But I think everybody sort of understands that they've hit their ceiling. And I think people are pleased with that. The fact that they're here, especially you go back to the first round down to Chicago, there was a lot of question about whether they get to the second round, let alone here to the conference finals. So I think there's some excitement as far as this team having maximized what its abilities are, but at the same time, I don't think anybody has delusions about winning this series. But you do look ahead and you do look at, okay, there is this number 1 pick this year, and then you've got the summer where you could sign a max free agent. You've got room to do that if that opportunity presents itself, and then going forward, LeBron will be another year older next year, and maybe that gives you a little more daylight here in the Eastern Conference.
Well, Sean, I don't know if you heard Joel Embiid's comments last night, but he said, "Look, when LeBron's ready to start coming down to back to earth, we're going to be ready to pass them." That's kind of where team's mindset is, right? Is we have to build for the opportune time for when LeBron takes a slip. The question is, when is that?
Yeah, I mean, and certainly with the way he's played in the postseason, and really you see this throughout the league where guys can play deeper into their 30s. They take better care of their bodies. There's better training staffs. You're not smoking in the locker room or popping beers in the locker room, the way they did even 15 years ago. So that certainly helped guys. So here LeBron at 32, you have to figure that he can keep going at 35, 36, and still be at a pretty high level, barring injury, which he's mostly avoided for his career. So yeah, that is the mindset of a lot of teams in the East. That's one of the reasons why Danny Ainge wasn't too quick to pull the trigger on a deal, because he knew, look, if you put Jimmy Butler on the Celtics, you think with the team they have now, you think they're going to beat Cleveland in this series? No, of course not. So, that's why you have a little bit of patience and things like that. I think the big question, Mike, is what if you're in the West? Because that team, all those guys are young. How do you build a team to try to beat the Warriors? You might have to think 10 years out.
Is that something, do you think, Sean, was on the table for Boston at the trade deadline to do something with this pick and use it for Butler or George and decide it? We're better off with the pick moving forward than maybe this year with one of those guys against this Cleveland team for the next 2-3 years?
Yeah, and that was on the table, and there were different scenarios where they didn't want to give up too much for even Jimmy Butler or even Paul George for that matter, especially with George having the added question of what he wants to do when he hits free agency. So that's all certainly was a factor for the Celtics. And then the other thing Danny Ainge said last night was he'll still consider trading this pick. And he's in a better position now because if he was trading the Brooklyn pick before the lottery, he was trading a 25% chance at the number one pick. Now that he has the number one pick, he's got a better opportunity to trade it. But that might be a lot of smoke. I still think that they're going to use the pick.
Talking with Sean Deveney from the Sporting News in Boston for the series tonight. You can hear the game on 97.3 ESPN. Celtics and Cavs. They get the number one pick, and which is kind of an unprecedented situation. They're the number one seed, 53 wins, and they have the number one pick. So they got to be feeling like they're moving in a very good direction. And then there's number two where the Lakers are. How much of a relief was it for them? Because it could have been a huge black hole for that team if they didn't stay in that number three spot or the number two spot last night. If they lost that pick to the Sixers, it could have been 2 years before they got another pick.
Yeah, and the when you're talking to folks at the Lakers, look, one of the reasons why Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss are out is that they came to a realization, having gone through all these free agent up and downs in the last few years, that they've got to build through the draft, they've got to build through the lottery, and if they were to have lost that pick, then that would have set all of that back a little bit farther, because now with the number two pick, they have a chance to make a trade if that's what they decide they want to do. Certainly it puts them in a better position in terms of turning around quickly. Now, if Lonzo Ball is the guy they decide that they want to build around going forward, then that's what they'll do. And I do think that's the strongest possibility. But now you've got an asset to work with that if you didn't have, all of a sudden that rebuild looks much longer, much tougher.
Sean, what's the thinking around the league with what they? Because they've been in the lottery. I mean, this is the third time they've picked number three or in the top three. I mean, they've gotten D'Angelo, they got Ingram, they're going to get another pick this year. So, what is kind of the jury on the young guys they already have?
Well, there's still a long way to go, but when you look at what their ages are, and they're all about 22 or younger, they're still very much developing. So, you talk to scouts and GMs, and if they do take Lonzo Ball, you probably keep D'Angelo Russell and see if you can work with those two guys together, because they still have a lot of faith in his ability. However, now that you've made the change, Magic Johnson is going to be much quicker on the trigger in terms of making the deal and getting rid of some young guys in order to bring in guys who can win right away. That's probably not the way to go. And I think that's what, like I said, that's what Kupchak and Buss sort of realized, that you can't just make those deals. You can't go out and just sign free agents and be the Lakers again, because that's not how it's worked lately. They haven't had those opportunities, and they've mostly missed on the guys they've tried to sign. So, I think that they have to have some faith in those young guys. We'll see if indeed Magic Johnson is quick on that trigger finger. But I think in the end, they're going to have to let these guys grow together a little bit and see what they got before they start making moves.
Sean Deveney, Sporting News, covering the NBA. And then there's the Sixers. Number one, what was the kind of reaction around the league to that pick swap being, the fact that they had that still in their back pocket? That was from a trade 2 years ago from Sam Hinkie with the Kings and the Sixers last night. The difference from being 5-3, what was kind of the reaction around the league when the Sixers were able to make that jump?
Yeah, I mean it's just another benefit because there's generally considered to be 5 really quality players in this draft. So you probably still would have gotten one of them. But now, beyond those two, now you got your pick of 3, 4, and 5. You've got the guy that you want to get. So that's a pretty big bonus for them. I thought it was funny to watch Embiid, of course, who wasn't quite understanding that, but in the end understood that it had worked out where it didn't necessarily have to, and it could have been a worst case scenario that they did in fact avoid in the end.
So we had Colangelo on earlier. He said, "Look, it's winning. It's about winning now." Should people who follow the NBA begin to believe that the Sixers are ready to take that next step and look at that roster and say, okay, Embiid and Sarge and Simmons and this number 3 pick, and they got Jared Bayless coming back and Covington. Do they look like a team that is ready to take the next step, and how big of a step can that be, if so?
Well, a lot of it depends on how good Ben Simmons is. Obviously, whether Joel can stay healthy. Those are the two big factors that we still don't know. But if Simmons is sort of as advertised, and obviously be a rookie and then will make his mistakes, but if he is as advertised, they add the number 3 pick, and then I think you still need to maybe bring in at least one veteran, maybe two, guys who, even if they don't play a lot, can kind of point these guys in the right direction and give them a little bit of a sense of winning. That's been sort of the worry about this franchise as well. Have they lost too much that they can't figure out how to win? I never really bought into that too much, but I do think that having those kind of guys in the locker room can be beneficial to bringing these guys along. So if you do all those things, like I say, and then if Simmons can be something close to what they expect, and if Embiid can be healthy, then I think that this is a team that's at least going to be in the mix for the playoffs as soon as next season.
Yeah, do you anticipate them being a player in free agency? I know Kyle Lowry's name has been mentioned. There's obvious ties to Philly and Colangelo, but do you think a top level or an upper tier free agent will consider Philadelphia after? There was so much no free agents will ever go there. Has that mindset changed?
Yeah, I think the mindset has changed. I'm not so sure that Brian's of the mind at this point to go out and spend big money on a free agent, before you know what you got, before you really understand, like I say, what Simmons is and what how things look for Embiid long term in terms of his knees. And until you get that all squared away, I don't know that you go out and sign a Kyle Lowry. I don't see what the point of that is, because it could all go sideways real quick. If Simmons struggles, if Embiid gets hurt again, and Lowry's as good as he's been, he's on the back nine of his career here, and if you're shelling out that kind of money for him, you don't know what you're going to get in, say, 2 years. You don't know how healthy he'll be in 2 years. So I think it would be a little premature to go out and be a major player on the free agent market. I think you just, like I say, I think you find the veterans who you think will fit well, and you go with that.
Sean Deveney, NBA writer from the Sporting News. So you've covered the league for a long time. We've just gone through the Sixers quote-unquote process. And then Mark Cuban comes out and basically says, we did everything possible to try to lose games. How are those comments going to go over with the NBA commissioner and the league?
Not well at all. That's obviously that was a big problem that a lot of owners had with what the Sixers were doing, and made that clear, and that's part of the reason why they were nudged into change or shoved into change, depending on who you ask. I think that you could wind up even seeing a fine for that, probably a major fine. That's something that the league, even if you sort of are explicitly doing that, you don't explicitly say it. You don't make it clear that's what you're doing. So I do think the league will have a pretty big problem with that. If there is going to be tanking, then keep it under the rug and don't go out and say it publicly.
Yeah, I mean. It's very frustrating because I think we all look at the league and say, well, there's 2 to 3 teams that can win, and now the other teams are recognizing that themselves and saying, well, if only 2 to 3 teams can win, we're better off losing. I mean, I know there's not a legitimate or quick fix on that, but the league, don't they have to recognize this as well and say, we got a problem here?
Right. Well, they have. And the thing is that everything they've tried to do to address it hasn't worked. I mean, they've tried putting in, the revenue sharing, for instance, and they tried increasing the luxury tax penalties and all that. But the way things have worked out, they couldn't have anticipated that, say, the TV deal was going to explode and create enough room for Golden State to sign Kevin Durant and still keep the three guys that are sort of their main guys. That they could not. There's no way the league could have anticipated that. So they tried to do all these things, but circumstances sort of bit them in the ankle. There's nothing you can do. You could change all the rules, but then if luck doesn't help you out, and it didn't help out the league in terms of that, then you're going to sort of be where you are.
Yeah, I think it's a bad spot for the league to be in, where now the owners, I mean, the Sixers tried it, they got criticized, but I think even the biggest detractor has, like I said, if you were where they were, do you want a team with Embiid and Simmons and Sarge and this pick, and they have 2 picks next year and 2 picks in the year after that, or would you have rather stayed the course with, say, Iguodala, Drew Holiday, Evan Turner, and Thaddeus Young? Which team has a higher ceiling?
Right, exactly, and it's a pretty strong argument in favor of what the Sixers have done. I think the one thing that Adam Silver keeps in his back pocket is that that he can use the other owners to put pressure on owners whose teams start to do that, and that's clearly really the only leverage that the league has in order to prevent teams from taking that path.
Yeah, I mean, we had Cuban was on with us, it had to be back in September, and his exact quote was, "I'm a huge fan of Sam Hinkie." It's crazy, and now you hear him say these things, and you wonder how many other owners in this league or other teams would like to follow suit. And I think Cuban coming out as a high-profile owner is had to be the league's worst nightmare today.
Yeah, and Cuban was sort of being a little more targeted in his tanking. He didn't quite say that it was going to be a 5-year tank job that they were going to try to do or anything like that. So that's a little bit different.
Right.
But yeah, the league doesn't even like to hear that word.
No.
They just don't like to hear that word at all.
All right, the Sixers with that 3rd pick in the draft, and they're in an interesting spot. So are you in the camp that Fultz and Ball are 1 and 2?
Yeah, I believe so. And, unless there's a deal or something like that, and even if there is a deal, that might be how it plays out anyways. But yeah, I think that's how it winds up going.
If you're Philly now, Colangelo, you sit there at number 3. Is there a guy that sticks out for you? I mean, they're in a weird spot because Ben Simmons has never played, so you don't know anything about him. They want to play him at the point. You got Joel Embiid. You got Dario. Covington's a guy they like. So is there a guy that you think is a good fit for them?
Yeah, because, I mean, if you think that De'Aaron Fox is the 3rd best player, as a lot of scouts do, then you're also saying, okay, we're going to put the ball into this guy's hands because he needs it. I mean, he's not a shooter. He's not a guy who's going to play off the ball. You got to give him the ball and let him be the playmaker. And that sort of runs afoul of what they want to do with Simmons. So I do wonder if they're going to look more on the wings. And certainly there'll be 2 available, most likely Jason Tatum and Josh Jackson. Who you'd have to pick from. I think Tatum's probably a little bit of a safer pick. I think Jackson probably has more upside. I think Tatum's a guy who can come in and be pretty good right away. I think Jackson can as well, but I think that there's a lot more that's still a little bit unknown about Jackson. So I would imagine that once you decide, okay, we are going to put the ball in Simmons' hands, we're not going to for Fox that you wind up looking at one of those wings.
All right, Sean Deveney, Sporting News tonight. It's Boston and Cleveland. Listen to the game here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, the Western Conference Finals continue. And that doesn't pick up until what, Saturday? Is that when that is? Saturday, Sean?
Yeah, they take a little time off between these games. Don't they?
Yes, they do. At Sean Deveney on Twitter, and check him out at thesportingnews.com as great NBA stuff from Sean. Appreciate it, pal.
All right, Mike, thanks.